Okay, hello everyone. This is a presentation of the uses and ethical reasons why we shouldn't use radioactive energy as a source to supply people and a source to make reactors out of. For this, we will be investigating the Chernobyl incident and parts of the Fukushima incident, as they have enough evidence for it. So, before we go any further, I need to clarify a very important term, and that term is what is an isotope. Isotopes are very scientific terms for basically a type of atom which has an equal amount of neutrons and protons, but the different number of neutrons in the nuclei of the atom is unstable, which would lead to what in the modern day and what normal people would describe as radiation, due to it decaying and its instability. Now, on to our topic. Why did the Chernobyl incident start? The most catastrophic reactor incident was Chernobyl in the year 1986 in Ukraine. Pripyat city, Chernobyl, had a nuclear reactor malfunction due to a test gone wrong. Due to the RBMK2 reactors constantly needing maintenance due to their unreliability and due to being built off nuclear weapons, test runs would be constantly done. As well, these were in the early prototype stages of nuclear power, so it was in early experimentation, which led to it requiring many maintenance issues. As mentioned just then, these reactors were experimental, and the USSR, also commonly known as the Soviet Union, they were in early stages in using nuclear energy, as they soon adapted from nuclear firepower into energy, because after all, this was in the Cold War. The Cold War went on for a duration of time in between America and Russia. One of the most common goals they had was nuclear energy. Fortunately for Russia, they were first to be experimenting with it. As you can see here is a diagram of the RMBK reactor. This will teach us what went wrong and why it went wrong. As you can see, they use nuclear rods. This is then agitated by the hot water, which creates steam from the graphite rods. This steam is heavily radioactive and is enough steam to gratefully create energy for turbines to run on. As we know, most energy is created through making a turbine move. This goes for the same with nuclear energy. As you can see, it also relies on water. This was another downfall, as water would get in the way of the nuclear reactors. And if any water went anywhere, issues would come arise and the water could possibly cause a meltdown. Now, we have learnt about that, we can move on to the ethics. As you can see, this is a nuclear pool. This is where they would store spent rods for a couple decades before disposing of them in landfill. This was the safest way to do it, as hydrogen, also known as water by normal people, this is the easiest way and safest way to store radiation, as the hydrogen particles practically suffocate and create a barrier around the nuclear particles, therefore making it safe to be in that area. This is a very efficient way and is a good way for the government to classify this type of radiation as ethical, but little do we know, disaster is waiting to happen. Soon after the reactors exploded, there was a mass evacuation from Chernobyl, and this made many people leave their homes, made them poor and bankrupt, and the government of the USSR did not offer any help to the civilians that once lived in Chernobyl. Eventually, after that, they had to, by the government, there were too many people that were going to die, so they needed to do something about it. Their goal was to cover up the radiation with sand, so they hired in military helicopters. These military helicopters had sandbags with them. They would fly over the reactor and covering it in sand. When they covered it in sand, the radiation would be suffocated, just like how water would do it. But unfortunately, one of the helicopters got too close, making the circuits fry and making the pilot possibly radiation sick. This made the helicopter crash. Unfortunately, everyone in the helicopter passed away, either on impact or later on. Unfortunately, their deaths did not make much of a good impact. Instead, they had to get pure civilians, not military but civilians, to do the dirty work. 3 countrymen became volunteers to be sent down into the Chernobyl basement, and they had to turn the reactor valves off. Otherwise, the water, which at this point was now lava, would spread out of Chernobyl and probably cause more spread of the radiation. Since the Soviet Union had no idea what would be down there in the basement, there even could be live lava, they sent down 3 volunteer civilians. The civilians, weeks later, died of radiation poisoning. Unfortunately, they probably spread this radiation poisoning to others. What we can learn from this is that radiation is a source way out of human understanding. We have only touched the bare minimum of it, and it is a power which is devastating. Even if the slightest material is exposed to nature, it could cause catastrophic events, such as mutation and generational radiation. In the real world, radiation has actually done a lot of generational issues. We can even learn this from nuclear weapons that were fired on Japan during World War II. It doesn't just affect the current world, it can also affect the future. Radiation causes nothing but harm, and it will do anything, absolutely anything, to spread anywhere and it will affect anything such as crops and even people and even animals. It can affect anything. And this is why radiation should be kept out of the hands of reach of governments and mankind as a whole. Thank you for listening to my assignment. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry if it is a little bit long, if I lacked any sort of emotion when talking about it. But I hope you enjoyed, and this is why radiation is unethical.